Well, it's April 20th or 420, and we all know what that means. No, not that. Today was the day of Apple's spring event press conference. Today saw the announcement of quite a few new products, but since this is an art channel, I'm going to focus on the new iPad Pros that were announced today. Plus, not to be outdone, Savage Entertainment gave us a sneak peek at Procreate 5.2, so we're going to talk about what's new there. It's all coming up in today's episode. Keep watching. So today, Apple announced the new 12.9-inch and 11-inch iPad Pros. Both of these come with Apple's M1 chip, the same chip that was introduced last year in Apple's Mac lineup. You get an 8-core CPU and an 8-core GPU, which means 50% faster CPU performance and 40% faster graphics. So this is a pretty big deal because up until now, Apple's only used redesigned smartphone chips in its iPads. So this is the first time that Apple's going to use the same chip in their iPads that they use in their laptop and desktop models. So Apple's always kind of billed the iPad as a laptop replacement, but let's be honest, it's never really got there. It's always been limited by the operating system. So does this mean having the same chip in an iPad as we do in laptops and desktops? Are we finally going to see a true Mac OS on the iPad? Maybe kind of a dual boot thing where you get to choose between Mac OS or iPad OS? Of course, only time will tell that, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. Next up, let's talk about the screens. The real standout here is the 12.9-inch model featuring a Liquid Retina XDR display. So this screen has some crazy specs. You get extreme dynamic range, a 1,000,000:1 contrast ratio with 1,000 nits of full screen brightness and 1,600 nits of peak brightness. And just for comparison's sake, the current iPad Pro model has 600 nits of peak brightness compared to the new 1,600 nits. So huge jump. In addition to all that, you also get P3 wide color, True Tone, and Pro Motion. So how is all this achieved? Well, the 12.9-inch Pro features the long rumored mini LED display. This display is made up of 10,000 mini LEDs. So to explain how impressive this is, the last iPad Pro model has a whopping 72 LEDs compared to the new 10,000 mini LEDs. A massive jump. So Apple's calling this display XDR because it's built on the same performance as Apple's 32-inch Pro XDR monitor, which has a starting price of $4,999, which makes this pretty impressive for a tablet display. There's also 2,500 local dimming zones, which can have their brightness manually adjusted, which is what's going to give you that 1,000,000:1 contrast ratio. So the 11-inch doesn't get this crazy display. It sticks with the 600 nits peak brightness Liquid Retina that's featured in the current iPad Pro models. So what else is new? Well, cellular models now get 5G capabilities. You can hook up PS5 controllers to play games with haptic feedback, but that's not art related. This next thing, it's not art related either, but this is really cool. There's also a new ultra wide camera with what Apple is calling Center Stage. As you move around on video calls, it's going to automatically pan to keep you centered in the frame. And if other people walk in or leave the room while you're doing a video call, the view is going to expand or zoom in. So I use my iPad a lot for art, but I also use it a lot for FaceTime calls. And this is going to come in handy when talking to nieces and nephews. Very cool feature. Definitely going to use this one a lot. The new Pros keep the same USB-C connectors as the previous Pro models, but this time Apple is adding Thunderbolt. So this is going to allow you to transfer art files or raw photos or video files super fast, up to 40 gigs a second. One cool thing is the same Magic Keyboard and the Gen 2 Apple Pencil from the previous iPad lineup is going to work with this, so no need to buy something new if you already have those. Another few key features to kind of round everything out. You also get a 5 studio quality microphone array and then a 4 speaker system that supports Dolby Atmos. So next up, let's talk about storage, and Apple has upgraded the top tier storage of these new iPad Pros. Storage starts at 128 gigs, moves up from there to 256, then to 512, up to 1 terabyte, and then finally it maxes out at, yes, 2 terabytes as the top storage option in these new iPad Pros. So I know people always wonder about what storage size they should get when purchasing a new iPad. Seems to be a common question here on my YouTube comments as well as on Facebook art groups, and I'm here to tell you that decision is about to get a lot harder. So as I've talked about a lot in my previous videos, all iPad models in any certain year release cycle, they all have the same amount of RAM. It doesn't matter what size iPad storage-wise you get, the RAM's always the same, with the exception of the 2018 iPad Pro 1TB model. That was the only time that the RAM was different based on storage size. So in the 2018 Pros, all the models had 4 gigs of RAM, except for the 1TB, which had 6 gigs of RAM. So with the 2018 Pro models, those extra 2 gigs and the 1TB didn't really matter even, because Apple said those extra 2 gigs were reserved to manage the extra storage space. Apple didn't make those 2 gigs available to developers, so you didn't see any real world performance when using apps. So the real reason why this is important, the reason why you should care about RAM, is because if you're using an iPad for art, your number of available layers in Procreate is going to be determined by the amount of RAM you have in your iPad. So the more RAM you have in your iPad, the more available layers you have to use in Procreate. So the current iPad Pros have 6 gigs of RAM, and the new iPad Pros start a little bit higher. So the 128, the 256, and the 512 gig models have 8 gigs of RAM, while the 1TB and 2TB models have a whopping 16 gigs of RAM. So is this going to be a case like the 2018 Pros where those extra 2 gigs of RAM are just there to handle the extra storage? I don't think so. So Apple's never really talked about the RAM available in the iPads before. It was always a case where you had to wait till somebody got their hands on an iPad, ran a benchmark to find out exactly how much RAM was in any given model. But during the press conference today, you can see that the graphics shown on stage highlights up to 16 gigs of RAM. So this really leads me to believe that Apple is going to give developers access to that extra RAM if they're advertising it behind them on stage and saying up to 16 gigs, which means more available layers in Procreate if you fork out the extra money for the 1TB or 2TB models. So honestly, this is just a guess. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Procreate today on their Twitter feed wouldn't answer one way or the other. They said it was kind of up in the air too, so time will tell. But if this does pan out, if those extra 8 gigs are available and it means more layers in Procreate, that's going to make choosing a storage size so much harder. So now on to the really important stuff, price. So starting out with the 11-inch, the 128 gig model starts at $799. The 256 is $899, the 512 is $1099, the 1TB is $1499, and the 2TB is $1899. And if you want cellular 5G, that's $200 extra added to all those prices. And finally, we've got the 12.9-inch model. The 128 gig is $1099, 256 is $1199, the 512 is $1399, the 1TB is $1799, and the 2TB is $2199. And once again, $200 extra for 5G, meaning the 2TB model is almost $2,400. Got to remember too, the Apple Pencil doesn't come with any of these, so that's an extra $129 too. So all the models are available for pre-order starting on April 30th, and then they start shipping out the second week of May. So that's it for iPads, but Savage Entertainment also gave us a sneak peek of Procreate 5.2, so let's take a look and see what's new. So number one with Procreate 5.2, you're going to be able to import 3D models and paint them in Procreate. You can even preview your 3D artwork in augmented reality, allowing you to see your painted model in the real world with realistic lighting and shadow effects. So Savage also said, with the M1 chips featured in the new iPad Pros, you're also going to see up to a 4 times performance boost in Procreate. Looks like there's also going to be some new menu changes, allowing tools that are easier to find and adjust, like the new look for the palettes menu that you can see here. The 5.2 update is also going to add audio feedback, allowing you to hear every move you make backed up with voiceover integration. All right, so that's it for all of today's news. What did you think about today's announcements? What did you think about that iPad Pro price tag? Are you planning on upgrading, or maybe you're going to make this your first iPad? Let me know down in the comments. So for me, I'm going to get the 1TB 12.9-inch model, not because I need to upgrade, but I want to do a review video for you guys and give you my opinion once it's released. I plan on doing a comparison between the new 2021 model, my 2020 iPad Pro, and even my 2015 first-gen iPad Pro to give you a full comparison between the three. So you don't want to miss out on that. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do that and hit the bell for notifications so you can get alerted when that new video gets posted. As for me, I can be found online at bjaydell.com as well as on Instagram and Twitter at bjaydell. So until next time, keep creating.